I'm hearing them make all these accusations at me, at James Mason, talking about how we're controlled opposition, how we're working for the government. And I'm just sitting here sipping coffee, just listening to this, thinking, what? What the fuck are they talking about? I'm working for the government. I have a working class job, for Christ's sakes. Man, if I was working for the government, siege culture would be much bigger. I would have all the funding I needed. You know?
Right.
So, man, I wish that the government would take interest in me and want me to work for them. I mean, I would say, hell yeah, you know, give me that money. Give me that funding. I need it.
This is The Empire Never Ended. I'm Fritz.
Ray, nice. Hey, Ray's talking over me here.
That was smooth. We are on new equipment that we tried out in the last episode. We're trying to do it in quarantine right now, seeing how that goes. And I think that's perfect for today's episode about some internet-based neo-Nazis, the famous Atomwaffen.
So, in our previous two episodes, we went through James Mason and his child, Siege, and today we're going to be dealing with the people that really, really, really like Siege on the internet.
The ultimate Mason fanboys.
Yeah, James Mason finally found, like, his guys. They finally appeared.
And these guys are going to tie our whole season together in a way, connecting Myatt all the way to Mason.
Yeah, this is an important episode in this series of episodes that we did because so far we talked about like two strains of Nazi sociopathy. One is this Satanist ONA Temple of Blood strain. We did, I think, 4 episodes of the Order of Nine Angles, and I think 2 on Temple of Blood. Yeah. So and then I think 2 on James Mason. So this is where all of this comes together finally.
In this, exactly what you would hope from it. In a mess of just ridiculous, dangerous stupidity, coupled with the amount of pedophilia you've come to expect from this.
Yes, the usual amount.
This politic,
and unfortunately, murder. Which is, why Atomwaffen's gotten a bit of press in the past few years.
Yeah.
And why the press has gotten a bit of Atomwaffen.
Yes.
Let's not forget
Indeed.
that this is a lot of this is the story of a boy named Rape.
Yep.
That's what he called himself.
Yeah, but the Atomwaffen story starts a bit before that. It's connected to the history of this Nazi forum called Iron March that doesn't exist anymore. It was founded in 2011 by this guy in Russia whose real name is Alisher Mukhdinov. But he calls himself Alexander Slavros. So he lives in Russia, but he's of Uzbekistani origin, which is I don't know if it's weird or not, but I guess it's.
I mean, for just a little bit of background on that, I think that maybe a lot of people don't realize that in the West or outside of Russia is that Russia's one of the largest immigrant destination countries in the world. It has a huge population of immigrants. Most of them are from Central Asia, former Soviet republics. Now, Uzbeks, Tajiks, Kyrgyz, everybody from the Central Asian republics were, ironically in this case, particularly targeted by Russian neo-Nazis throughout the 90s and early 2000s. They're referred to by this racial slur, which means black assholes in Russian, черные жопы. That's what they call all people from Central Asia. So the fact that, this guy, Alexander Slavros, Alisher Mukhdinov, is actually Uzbek or half Uzbek. He considers himself half Russian. He doesn't really talk about the Uzbek part very much. It's a little bit strange.
And apparently he's quite a kind of an upper class or upper middle class person. He's supposedly he's a close relative on his father's side was this guy called Nuruddin Muhdinov, who was fought in the Battle of Stalingrad, and later he led the Uzbek government under Khrushchev. And also he was the member of the Presidium of the Communist Party of Soviet Union, which was the predecessor of the Politburo. So this would make like what in Yugoslavia his family would be called like red bourgeoisie or something like this, the ruling class of a so-called socialist country.
He's also a very accomplished author. I had the pleasure
of intellectual. Yeah.
Well, I read a book of his called The Squire's Trial. Fucking great. It's real good fashfic.
Yeah.
In the sense that it's horribly repetitive, really sad, and is mostly about a smaller working guy being impressed by a very tall, blonde, handsome Nazi pirate.
I mean, he's
he's not a tall, blonde, handsome.
Not at all. No.
Aryan dude in any way. Seems to be a big problem for him.
As a typical kind of middle class person, he studied psychology at the Moscow State University and then transferred to political science. But he was expelled for missing an exam. Also, his parents are also typical kind of middle class. His mother is a journalist and his father is a businessman. Also, he's the sponsor of this university that Alisher Olslaver studied at, and his father is a CEO of a charitable foundation, which ironically is supposedly serving those who migrate to Russia looking for work.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually it would be more accurate to kind of categorize him as like upper class in Russia.
Yeah, no, he's of independent means, guys.
Yeah,
I think they also they looked up his address. I mean, he lives in like really one of the most posh areas of Moscow, like relatively close to the Kremlin and, in the center.
It's an area called Tverskaya, I think, which is, this is known because he registered his website, slavros.com, in that area, from that area of Moscow. And he, before he became a Nazi, he identifies as a Stalinist, which is not that big of a shift from Stalinist to being a Nazi.
Not spoiled.
And also, for example, he is a person a very an extremely online person who has these kind of real or semi-real relationships with people, including emotional relationships with women on the internet. So one of the person that he had a relationship with was an American woman called Lindsay Suvanarat. And she's, I believe she's serving a life sentence now.
She is. She's half Laotian, half white. Was like a teenage Nazi who tried to plan a school shooting in Halifax, Nova Scotia with a Canadian teenage Nazi.
Yeah, with two other guys. One of them, I think, killed himself. Yeah. It was like a Halifax mass shooting plot. So he's a typical kind of person that you could imagine being into James Mason. Like, for example, Fritz said that he's like a kind of, he sees himself as a writer and an intellectual. But so he has thoughts like this, like, we don't think murder is wrong on principle, and we do not believe that every human life is sacred. This applies to our own people as well. Just because they are kin by blood doesn't mean they can be cancer to the nation, which must be removed in order for truth and justice to triumph.
Mason actually says something almost identical to that in Siege. I mean, he's probably just basically quoting him or paraphrasing him there.
Yeah. So, I mean, this forum, Iron March, that he started, this was... it became an organizing platform for a bunch of already existing Nazi groups, like Golden Dawn from Greece or Azov Battalion from Ukraine or the Nordic Resistance Movement, but also it became a platform that individual Nazis used to start new organizations, like the National Action in Britain or Antipodean Resistance and Atomwaffen Division that we're talking about today. This organization was actually started on this forum. And in general, the user base of Iron Match was dominated by people who accepted the so-called accelerationist ideology of James Mason and heavily promoted his book Siege.
Actually, I think Siege was required reading in Iron March, technically. To become a member, you were supposed to read Siege and some of Slavros' shit.
Okay. Yeah, and I think a lot of this aesthetics that is characteristic for Atomwaffen was started there, I would say. It's very similar. I don't know, how would you describe this kind of aesthetics?
Well, the siege culture aesthetic was described by some Nazi on a message board as like Newgrounds. If you remember Newgrounds games,
Yes.
These like flash games that had like really edgy stuff, like a school shooter game and stuff like that. It's Newgrounds art. So if you're from that era, you know exactly what it looks like. It also kind of looks like Frank Miller's work from Sin City a bit, but like splattered with blood and things like this.
And also it has this kind of some of their stuff have this kind of nuclear wasteland vibe to them, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys remember the what was it, Iron Gates reading we did, this is kind of just the description of that, as bad as that description is very much what these posters look like post-apocalyptic urban hellscape kind of vibe.
Also, the videos that they make are the same,
and of course, like the characteristic skull masks and their
I think they almost exclusively use black, white, and red as colors, except for yellow when it's used in like the nuclear logo. But even that's usually just black and white.
I mean, it's deliberately like made to be like extreme looking and very extremely on first look pro-violent, antisocial kind of thing. That's supposed to shock you, I guess. The Iron March closed in the end of 2017. The reasons were unclear why it happened, but BBC Russia reported that it was suspected that Alexander Slavrov was pressured by the Russian government to close the website because he and the website were heavily supportive of the neo-Nazi Azov battalion, which the Russians are in a war against. So he closed it down, and in the end of 2019, some anonymous individual uploaded a database of Iron March users and their chats to the Internet Archive. So it's basically available now to research, and a lot of things were found out. There like a bunch of active members of the U.S. Armed Forces were active at the forum, including like an ICE detention center captain and so on.
The website is called Iron March Exposed, and it's a really great way to spend a weekend with family. It's good.
Which makes it searchable. I mean, you can download the entire.
It's easily searchable.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there was an attempt to start the kind of a new Iron March, which was called Fascist Forge, but this was removed from the internet, I think, in the end of 2019 or beginning of this year. And so Atomwaffen Division itself claims to be founded in 2013, but we really know about their existence since 2015 when they had some first public actions. Their founder was a guy called Brandon Clint Russell, who is in prison now. Most of these people are like in their early 20s or even late teens, some of them. Yeah. There are some older people, like in the 30s or late 20s involved, but usually very young.
I think that Iron March in general skewed much younger than other kind of Nazi internet things. I mean, they hated like Stormfront, for example, because it was like dominated by old weirdos
and hilarious movie reviews.
Yeah, I mean, it's very dominated by this like younger generation of people who are very much influenced by this very kind of antisocial internet culture that developed in the last 5-10 years. Like they intersect with like the incel movement and similar things that exist. So this guy, Brandon Clint Russell, who's I think from Florida, he started the group. He's the founder. He was also formerly a member of the Florida National Guard. And so the first action that they had was like dispersing anti-Semitic propaganda around the University of Central Florida, and they made a bunch of YouTube videos of them doing that, or burning the American flag and Constitution and such things. Sometime later, I will come back to this, but just to show you, like, okay, so they started doing that, but in the end, this guy Russell, he was arrested with another Atomwaffen member in Florida Burger King, and they had an AR-15 and like a 1,000 rounds of ammunition. And the cops said they believed that he was on a route to Turkey Point nuclear power plant. And they said when we found all the weapons, we were convinced that we had just stopped a mass shooting. Also, in his home, in his flat, they found a bunch of bomb-making material, like explosives and similar stuff.
I hope I'm not cutting your story off here, but it's also, I think, important to note that he was just released by the police. Moments before that.
I'm going to go. I'm going to talk about that. Why? What happened in that? That's an interesting apartment. A lot of things happened. A couple of days before that. Slavros, the Uzbek Russian guy, also had a role in founding the Atomwaffen. Although he's in Russia, he was in close communication with Russell. So, in a way, I think he can be considered a member of the organization, at least in these early stages. And today, again, I would say probably. A big thing for the first couple of years for Atomwaffen was the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally. Because this is because so the Atomwaffen, as you probably know, in this internet culture, this term "pilled" is used. That comes from the Matrix movie. For there is this red pill or blue pill. Like a red pill would mean finally something causing you to realize the true nature of reality or something like this. So these groups call themselves like siege pill groups. I mean, so usually they these people, they would say that they were red pilled when they became Nazis, but when they really found out and realized what needs to be done, this is when they were like red siege and they were siege pilled. So they closely identified with other siege pill groups that came out of Iron March or trying to copy or start as branches of Atomwaffen.
I tried the siege pill.
It's not, no.
It didn't work.
Nope.
Didn't do anything. I felt the same. I felt annoyed and bored.
And so Charlottesville this is the opposite, end of, as they see it, of the Nazi spectrum. So this is the typical kind of movementarian, as they call it, wing of the movement, trying to be respectable, doing things publicly with your real names, trying to win over the public opinion or something like this, which is they follow James Mason in this and saying that this is completely useless. Like, never will people be on our side on some massive scale. What they claim they need to do is to completely accelerate the destruction of society and hope for a kind of apocalyptic civil war and total destruction.
They talk a lot about the possibility of getting doxxed at these things as well, like how stupid is it to go and put your face everywhere, which will be funny later.
Yeah. So apparently a bunch of people who were involved in Charlottesville were totally disappointed by what happened there, and a lot of them joined Atomwaffen after that. Some of them were before that in different groups. There were more this other kind trying to be sort of respectable, but then they switched completely to this much more openly extreme side. Yeah, so some journalists who talked to ex-members of Atomwaffen said that Atomwaffen had roughly about 80 members with approximately 20 cells across the U.S., with the largest chapters in Virginia, Texas, and Washington State. Before we go in more detail into their ideology, what they believe, just to go straight to the murders, I was thinking, just to show you that this group is, they often sound like total, as you would call them, like edgelords or something, and they are, but they're also sociopaths. So
yes.
This is something that we've seen throughout this series, right? I mean, we make fun of these people a lot because, the shit that they believe in is fucking stupid, and they're deliberately edgy and this, that, and the other thing, but, of course, they do murder people. There are actual consequences to these beliefs. So
we mentioned already that the founder of the Atomwaffen, Brandon Russell, was arrested for having weapons, planning a mass shooting, and trying to make bombs. But what we didn't say is that a couple of days before that, something else happened in the flat where he was living. He had 3 roommates. All of 3 were affiliated with Atomwaffen. So the two of them were killed by the third flatmate of Brandon Russell. So Atomwaffen member Devon Arthurs, he murdered Andrew Wanchuk and Jeremy Heimelman. Apparently, the reason that Devon Arthurs gave for this murder was that he converted to Islam, and he was ridiculed by his two friends for this, and then he murdered them.
A sad side note, one of those guys was on his way out, apparently. Had already sort of been moving away from the movement and stuff.
Well, maybe that was him, no? Devon Arthurs, or...
I think, wasn't Devon Arthurs the ISIS guy?
Yeah, well, maybe he was moving from Atomwaffen into ISIS.
Yeah. No, but the other guy was sort of like normalizing and
like he was trying to
coming back to humanity,
not be a Nazi anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, he'd already sort of apparently his family says that they had kind of like had talks with him about it and had gone through a bunch of like dark times, and he was sort of normalizing now and on his way out. Well, and almost didn't go on this trip. Like was calling apparently being like, I don't like these guys. I'm just going to get through this, and then that's going to be it. But.
So the one guy who was killed was 18 years old, and the other was 22. And Devon Arthurs, when he was apprehended by the cops, he was like happy to talk about as much as he could about Atomwaffen to the cops, and even to try. This was like in Florida, and he even like tried to really persuade the cop that he was interviewing him. I think there is a video of this, how this is like a serious threat that you need really to pay attention to and not dismiss it. So he like sketched out in great detail their terrorist ambitions and even suggested like tactics that the cops could use to infiltrate the group and bring it down and such things.
Did he do this because, out of some sort of remorse, or was it more that like, oh wait, I'm like Al-Qaeda now, fuck these guys?
It's not completely clear, but it seems that he was remorseful or tried to pretend that he's remorseful. So I'm not like able to judge this from what I know. But for example, he said to the cop, "These people, they have no human empathy like we do," which is like a few days before that he killed his two roommates for making fun of him.
Right.
But yeah. So he also said how they plan to attack power lines, nuclear reactors, and synagogues.
So Brandon Russell is picked up and arrested in the wake of these murders, and is held by the cops, and they interrogate him about the explosive materials that they found in this apartment. And he says that they're there building rockets. And for the cops, that seems like it's fine. And now keep in mind that there's like a confession going on with the murderer here saying these people are terrorists, and they send Brandon Russell home. And then that's when he gets into the car with his buddy, loads up the car with the weapons, and gets arrested at Burger King or whatever.
So kind of typical reaction of police to just some white man.
Right. Yeah. It's like a joke. It's like it's like a Dave Chappelle joke about what you can do, like in like a good old boy police state,
Yeah. So another guy who's a relatively well-known murderer who was a member of the Atomwaffen Division is a guy called Samuel Woodward. He murdered a person called Blaze Bernstein, who was a California college student. He killed him allegedly because he was Jewish and gay. This happened in January 2018. Blaze Bernstein was 19 years old, and he was stabbed over 20 times. And Woodward was immediately celebrated by Atomwaffen members online, and they also said openly that we're only going to inspire more copycat crimes with stuff like this.
I think they called him some disgusting thing like what was it, like the
one man gay Jew wrecking crew.
Yeah.
Yes. What is interesting is that Samuel Woodward and Blaze Bernstein knew each other. They went to high school together. And according to some sources, they actually met, and Woodward supposedly picked up Blaze from his house. So I don't know if this is true. Some people claim that this is true. But then I don't know what happened, and he decided to kill him. Then we have a case of a very young guy called Nicholas Jampa, I guess, who was 17-year-old in 2017, Atomwaffen member, and he murdered the two parents of his girlfriend because they were not satisfied with her being in a relationship with a Nazi and tried to persuade her to dump him.
So they were killed for being good parents.
Yes.
Pretty much, yes.
Good. And he shot them to
Way
death.
to have family values.
He also shot himself, but he didn't manage to kill himself. And he was charged as a juvenile in a state court in Virginia with 2 counts of homicide. And a lot of research in Atomwaffen was done by ProPublica, and they also talked to some ex-Atomwaffen members who claimed that this murderer, was in direct communication with the group. Then there is this interesting, weird case connected to the Pittsburgh Synagogue shooting that happened in October 2018. So, a 46-year-old Robert Gregory Bowers killed 11 people and wounded 6 in this synagogue in Pittsburgh. And this was the deadliest attack on the Jewish community in the United States. So, this was done by this guy called Robert Bowers in Pittsburgh. But on the same morning when this happened, a 23-year-old Edward Clark committed suicide in Washington, D.C. He was connected to these online communities of Atomwaffen members and those related to them. And he was allegedly known in those communities online as DC Stormer. And he also had an older brother who was around 30 years old called Jeffrey Clark. And he was an online friend with the mass shooter from Pittsburgh. So he had a direct connection with them. And when the shooting happened, the brother wrote on the internet like that the massacre was a dry run for things to come.
Also notably, the shooter himself, before he went on the shooting, posted on Gab, fuck your optics, I'm going in, which is kind of him being against, or him stating his opposition to these kind of movementarian rightists, right?
So both brothers Clark were participated in the Charlottesville Nazi rally, then affiliated with Vanguard America, one of these groups from the other side of the Nazi movement, from Atomwaffen Division, and many Vanguard America members ended up joining Atomwaffen after the rally. And ProPublica and Frontline also claim that in the chat logs that they are available to them of Atomwaffen members, DC Stormer is mentioned quite a few times. Also some plans for him to meet the leaders of Atomwaffen in Houston. Houston is important because we will talk about who lives there soon. It was also confirmed to ProPublica by these ex-members of Atomwaffen that the Clark was most likely either a member or what the group called an initiate, someone seeking formal entrance into the group. So there was it's suspected that there was some kind of relationship between those two brothers and the mass shooter in Pittsburgh. And the older brother, Jeffrey Clark, the one who didn't kill himself, was arrested on weapon charges. And publicly, the police made some kind of connection to the Pittsburgh suspect, Robert Bowers. And his brother, as we said, he killed himself in Washington, D.C. He was dead from a gunshot from a Beretta pistol, which was one of 2 guns registered to him. But the cops also found magazines with additional ammunition at the scene. And there was no suicide note. And even the Clark family stated that they told the FBI that their son had association with white hate groups, and they fear that Edward Clark might have been intending to use the extra ammunition to kill others. So after Brandon Russell was imprisoned, he maintained some kind of connection to the organization. They used him for propaganda. There is, I think, a video of audio recording of his phone call from prison, which they made into a propaganda video. He's in total support of Atomwaffen still. But after he went to prison, there was a change of leadership. So this is, we finally come to this guy called John Cameron Denton, known in these circles as Rape. So yeah, this is also, it tells a lot that this is
charming fellow.
The nickname that he chose for himself.
Also known as, I think, Vincent Snyder is his other major nom de guerre.
There is an audio interview that he gave for a Nazi podcast, and he speaks there as Vincent Snyder. You can, I think...
It's a great interview. It's really worth checking out. I mean, in it, he implies more than once that he would be happy to work for the feds. Like, it's kind of, it's in this joking tongue-in-cheek way, but then, it's a joke the first time, but then the third time, you're like... Yeah.
He says how people who claim that they are feds are wrong.
Right.
Like, because he made and operates the Siege Culture website, which is like the main propaganda... I mean, I think it doesn't exist anymore, of Atomwaffen or in their ideology and aesthetics. And he said if we were funded by the state, Siege Culture would be much, much better. And I would love if they came and said, hey, you want some money? I would say, yes, of course, I need the money, and such things.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And you can really, you can get a good, some kind of a feeling what kind of a person he is. Like, as I said, he sounds like a total edgelord, almost poser, I would say. Like, deliberately trying to be kind of...
he seems like the guy
extreme,
that's... I don't know, if you're hanging out with your crew, there's always this guy that's sort of hovering around. He's not part of your crew, but he's always at the bar. I think this is him.
Yeah. I mean, I think he sounds like an asshole. Like, I think probably his friends think that he's an asshole. Like a pretentious dick.
I think most of the neo-Nazi movement thinks he's a piece of shit. Yeah. He got into a feud with Andrew Anglin. That was notable.
So this guy who calls himself Rape, he's from the Houston area,
deep in the heart of Texas.
Yeah, he's in his 20s, from the surroundings of Houston. So when the so-called DC Stormer was supposed to meet someone there, it was probably him and his younger brother, who's also a member of Atomwaffen. And his crew, he's a metal guy. He's into National Socialist black metal. He loves Warg Vikernes. And he's saying things like politics are useful, revolution is necessary. He often would say things like people are garbage, they don't deserve to live, and such things. This is his mindset. Yeah,
sure. He's siege-pilled.
Yes, very much siege-pilled. But it's interesting that he said before he was siege-pilled, he was, of course, red-pilled when he became a Nazi. And he stated that he was first red-pilled by people like Boyd Rice, Nicholas Schreck, and then James Mason, Charles Manson, and so on. But it's interesting, I mentioned these people a few times already, I think in the last episode. These people who were in the 80s members of the so-called Abraxas Foundation, this kind of Church of Satan affiliated arty fascist musician scene. So I think his nickname Rape has something to do with it, because Boyd Rice, the musician with pro-fascist sympathies, who founded the Abraxas Foundation, which was a social Darwinist group in the 80s, I think he used this Rape. It was maybe a title of one of his projects, and I know there are photos of him with a Rape T-shirt, deliberately trying to be very provocative, also like a horrible, pretentious asshole. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. This is also the group that first group that started heavily promoting James Mason, and one of the members of this group, Michael Moynihan, made the book Siege.
Compiled it into a...
Siege made it into a book, and published it in '93.
So this, Rape, John Cameron Denton is definitely a baby of the Siege. He's born from its pure...
And also of this scene, I would say. For example, because ProPublica did I think, a few documentaries about Atomwaffen. In one of these, they track down John Cameron Denton and interview him. And while they are trying to interview him, he's wearing a Radio Ralph T-shirt, which is a band of Nicholas Schreck, also affiliated with this group. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think he is very much influenced by this circle of people. And I think people need to pay attention to that because some of them are accepted by like liberals these days and even maybe some lefty people as artists or intellectuals or interesting people or something like this.
I just like the music, man.
Yeah. So now we come to this other thing. So definitely, as we already stated, since Iron March, Siege and James Mason are a big part of this scene. He's really deified almost by them. But now we come to the other element that we also already kind of mentioned. And this is that John Cameron Denton, he's a sympathizer and affiliated with the satanistic ideology of the so-called Order of Nine Angles that we already talked a bunch. So you should definitely listen to those episodes. I think there are 4 of them. And also the ONA affiliate in America called Temple of Blood. So, I mean, how to summarize this briefly, what it is. But it's like definitely a Nazi Satanist organization with a quasi-Nietzschean ideology of overcoming humanity, becoming something more than human, but explicitly in the Temple of Blood ideology, this literally means dehumanizing yourself and becoming a psychopath.
Well, becoming a vampire. Let's just
yes, explicitly becoming a vampire or a Noctulian, as they say.
A Noctulian.
Yes. Noctulian.
Noctulian.
Yeah, so Denton is affiliated with Temple of Blood. He's a member of the organization, and he has a personal relationship with we also did the 2 episodes of Temple of Blood, and the leader of the group called Joshua Sutter, who's an ex-Aryan Nations
he's a man who wears many hats.
Yes. I mean, a very bizarre individual, ex-leader of Aryan Nations who went to prison, and then he was accused by his comrades of being an FBI informant.
I'd guess credibly. My feelings about it anyway.
It's not very hard to imagine. I mean, especially because he totally embraced this thing when he became more open with his Satanism, and so their projects really, one of their publishing projects was called Angleton Imprints, called after James Jesus Angleton, the CIA, one of the founders of CIA, who recruited neo-Nazis after the war to do terrorism, basically for the Western Bloc.
Check out episode 1 of our podcasts for the full story there.
So I think when John Cameron Denton says that he would love to be recruited by FBI, I think he also has fantasies of this, He has probably quite literally a fantasy of someone like James Jesus Angleton coming and saying, listen, son, we need you to kill communists or anarchists for us, or something like this.
They want that like full immunity to kind of do whatever the fuck they want.
And I guess it'll probably come out a little later when we start seeing what happens as a result of these satanic revelations. But he was a Satanist first, as far as I can tell. I mean, that came before everything.
Well, because, it was in the black metal.
Yes, and he's sometimes criticized that he's not enough of an orthodox Nazi by others, because, of course, James Mason is heavily into Charles Manson, and he said when in the time of writing Siege in the 80s that he's the most important National Socialist of our time. And Denton goes even further than that, and he says that he likes Charles Manson more than he likes Hitler. So...
Right. Yeah, he's very public about this.
Yeah. And so Denton, when he was the leader of the group, before that the group had this required reading, which was Siege, of course. But with Denton, ONA and Temple of Blood books also became required reading for members. So, for example, the Order 9 Engels book, like Hostia, was required reading, and this horrible novel that we discussed called Iron Gates, written by Sutter, or officially Temple of Blood, is also required reading for Atomwaffen members. And they, of course, heavily promote Siege. They even came up with this hashtag Read Siege that they bombard internet with, which I think it's very clear from the last episode that you really don't need to read Siege.
No, not at all.
Yeah, and it's also clear that suddenly reading Siege isn't going to immediately open somebody's eyes either. I mean, you kind of got to already really want it, I think.
But they were so much into Temple of Blood stuff that they also came up with the hashtag Read Iron Gates. So it was kind of on the same level of importance for them, which is very bizarre.
Well, Iron Gates is also kind of like Siege sci-fi. It's the post-race war society.
I mean, it's even it's badly written. No, it's
well, I mean, just get in line.
It's terribly written.
That's how you know it's part of the genre.
Yeah. So, as we said, Denton and Atomwaffen, they have personal relationship with the leader of Temple of Blood, but they also found James Mason. They seeked him out, found him, and he became kind of an advisor to the organization.
/ like tourist landmark for Nazis.
Yes. So in the last episode when we talked about James Mason, we said that after 2002, he kind of disappeared. This is when the second edition of Siege was published, and he kind of went dormant for a while. But Atomwaffen people, they managed to track him down and meet him, I think in 2017, and they were really... They wrote on the internet like James Mason is back. They did an interview with him. They did like a promo video, and they were delighted to hear that he still like has the same opinion of Charles Manson, that his commune was solidly white, as he said, that he is a fan of Breivik, who Mason said that he was dead on, and Mason also said that he's mildly encouraged by the rise of Donald Trump, and that it's better to get up in the morning with Trump in the White House.
I think we all felt that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, Siege, I guess we don't have to go into it. We did an episode about it. It just, as someone said, a long string of essays celebrating murder and chaos in the name of white supremacy.
Peppered with racial slurs and, all the fun stuff.
And explicitly celebrating serial killers and mass shooters and so on.
Terrorism, etc. Listen, if you haven't heard the episode, you have to listen to it because we had to read it. It sucked. Yeah. It hurt us mentally, emotionally. You owe us.
We suffered. So
yes. So that don't read Siege, but do listen to the episode about it.
Yeah. So Mason is in his 60s now. He lives in Denver, Colorado. He lives actually in a subsidized Section 8 housing, which is specifically only for recipients of Section 8 vouchers, which is a federal subsidy that helps low-income people pay their rent. And there is a lot of photos.
Socialism.
Yeah. There is a lot of photos of Atomwaffen members visiting him and sitting in his flat, posing for pictures. He wore, just for this occasion, Mason wore again his old brown shirt stormtrooper uniform, and they're wearing their black Nazi uniforms. So they're taking pictures together, they're having fun.
I imagine Mason putting it on in slow motion as classical music plays behind him. Some Wagner.
Yeah. And he became a kind of an advisor, as we said, to the group. But so it's interesting to say because all of these young guys were visiting Mason, and some of his one of his neighbors said, at first, when we had young men coming up here, I thought maybe he was a pervert, to be honest with you.
Which as we know he is, but not for young men. Not that, young men is perversion or anything, but...
No, I think the taking photographs of 15-year-old girls who are the daughters of his friends, that qualifies for sure.
I mean, he's not into men, but they're... too old for him anyway.
They're too old for him anyway. Exactly right.
They're in their late teens.
But hey, listen. But when they have daughters,
Yes, this is his favorite thing. But this is not a one-way relationship. I think James Mason got a lot out of Atomwaffen crew as well. So they, as we said, came up with the whole Read Siege hashtag, heavily promoted his book. And not only that, but they made a third edition of the book, which they sell. And also they started compiling his texts into new books, even publishing his more, because as we said in the last episode, in the late 90s, early 2000s, James Mason became a kind of a Christian identity guy, which is, Christian identity is not really Christianity. It's not like I have a high opinion of Christianity, but this is definitely something quite different, I would say, especially in his version, no?
Yeah. It's... is Christian, I guess, only in name, right?
Yeah.
And which is the whole point. It's kind of this like cultural affiliation with Christianity more than like actually reading it or, taking it seriously.
Yeah. Boris pointed out in a previous episode that his reading of the Bible is essentially, it only makes sense if read from a racial perspective.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
And so they also started publishing these kind of books that he wrote, like The Theocrat and similar stuff. Also, he himself says that he is like technologically illiterate, but he now has a BitChute account, and he posts regularly very boring videos there. I have to say, for someone who considers himself to be a dedicated and only a propagandist, his videos are really dull.
What's the name of them? They're like a hello or a
from me to you.
From me to you. That's what they're called.
Creative name there.
So I guess this is done for him by these Atomwaffen people. So I think there is still some relationship there because I think he still uploads these videos.
Come on, he owes them a lot.
Yeah.
His entire late career is Atomwaffen based.
Yes.
He enjoyed a renaissance. He had disappeared for over a decade.
He'd better pick up the phone when they call. This is
so Atomwaffen, they follow Mason in vilifying all of these people, like the serial killers that he mentioned, but also, of course, Charles Manson, of course, Adolf Hitler, then Joseph Tomasi, one of the idols that James Mason had in his younger days. But also, for example, William Pierce, which could sound odd, but they like him very much. He is very different from them because he did exactly the opposite of what they want. He basically made the most successful neo-Nazi organization in America, I think.
And I think founded the genre of fast fiction.
Yes, this is the other side of him, because he made the organization called what was it called? National Alliance, which he dropped the swastika and the Nazi name, but it was quite obviously a neo-Nazi organization, but one that sort of modeled itself onto some far-right European parties, maybe even had relationships with the National Democratic Party in Germany and such things, and had a few thousand members, which is a lot for a Nazi group. And a lot of money, apparently, quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as Fritz said, he wrote these pro-terrorist horrible novels called The Turner Diaries and Hunter, which were also in this sociopathic genre of celebrating serial killers, mass murder, and so on.
The Turner Diaries being famously the favorite book of Timothy McVeigh.
Yes. So they are very much into both Timothy McVeigh and William Pierce, and in a group which was inspired by the Turner Diaries in the 80s called The Order. So this was a group which was led by Robert Matthews, and it recruited people from the Christian identity side of the movement, also from the explicitly Nazi side of the movement. And this was a terrorist group that they robbed quite a few banks. They bombed a synagogue in 1980, and then in 1984 they assassinated Alan Berg, a Jewish radio host who lived in Denver. I think they see them as a kind of role model organization. So as I said, they're like quite openly and almost exclusively pro-violent. Basically, is what their ideology is. So they, for example, they see violence as the only vehicle for apocalyptic racial cleansing and the imposition of order over its dystopian perception of the modern world, whatever that means. And so, as they say, their ultimate goal is to accelerate societal collapse, promote chaos, and create a racially pure white society, which I think they come as a result of, because they are very much believe in kind of a natural order, which they call universal order. This was the group that Mason had in the 80s. The name was suggested to him by Charles Manson directly. So this basically refers to a kind of a natural universal order which they equate National Socialism to. That if not in this degenerate society as they see it, nothing is worth conserving. So this is why any kind of conservatism is nonsensical in their opinion. Everything needs to be destroyed, and then not naturally, I guess, from this a new kind of National Socialist Order will come out of, I guess, is what they believe in.
And that's something that we also talked a lot about in the David Myatt episodes. It was reflected in his Aryan writings and such.
Yeah. So an important thing about Atomwaffen is not only that they murder people. Sometimes it's other Nazis. Sometimes, obviously, it's not. Is that they have a connection with the military. Like a deliberate one. So at least 7 Atomwaffen members were confirmed to have military experience. A couple of them were veterans who fought in the Iraq and Afghanistan. So a few of them, one of these people is a guy called Vasilios Pistolis. He was one of the guys who was active in Charlottesville. He bragged how he cracked skulls there and things like this. But after that, he joined Atomwaffen. And at the same time, he was serving in the U.S. Marine Corps, which I think he was kicked out of eventually because Huffington Post exposed him. And also, I think these... Yes, Huffington Post exposed him. And also, the ProPublica people, in one of their documentaries, you have a recording of a telephone interview with him when he basically offers to the reporter that he will snitch on, he will make his career, his journalistic career, if only they keep his name out of the press.
Right.
Something like this.
Yes. What a noble Aryan.
Yes, yes. So they actively recruit members of the military, but also, as Devon Archer said to the cops, they also deliberately join the military, especially to get training and access to equipment and so on. Also, as we already said, Brandon Russell, he was a member of the National Guard, and I think there's a few other people who were involved with the army or military.
Well, when we kind of come down to the end of the story, the military is going to come up in some pretty funny ways. There's a lot of stolen valor going around. As well, on top of the actual military connections.
So I'm just going to say a few more things about other stuff they did as a group. So Atomwaffen is known for holding these training sessions, which they organized in rural locations. A few locations, I think, like in Nevada, Illinois, Washington State, California, and Texas.
They followed the pilgrimage to Death Valley, the Manson pilgrimage.
They did that as well, huh?
Well, I think that's where they, I thought that's where they were training in Nevada.
Okay, I didn't know this. So they did this one in Nevada. It was mostly organized by a guy called Michael Lloyd Hubsky, who calls himself Commissar. So he's a bit older. I think he's in his 30s, and he was one of the let's say instructor in some of these. They call them hate camps, by the way.
Lovely.
So, for example, these are paramilitary style training camps, and they are like conducted by people who, some of them are not only in military, but they have actual like combat experience. So Michael Lloyd Hubsky, who is a senior Atomwaffen member from Las Vegas, has even claimed that he possesses a map of Nevada's power, or no, California's power grid, and he discussed intentions to attack American infrastructure. So he said, so in any war you need to cut off your enemy's ability to shoot, move, and communicate. You would want to target things like substations, water filtration plants, and etc. So also, like, some journalists came to some of their chats where they discussed these plans, and another typical kind of edgelord, but also sociopathic thing they wrote. Someone of them wrote there, I don't understand why people think killing/genocide requires justification. Every single genocide was deserved. Every single murder, killing spree, war.
Wait, except for the white genocide, right?
Exactly.
The other thing they were planning came directly from John Cameron Denton, who has been pushing for Atomwaffen members to pool money and purchase land in rural areas so they can, as he said, get the fuck off the grid.
Yeah, he's so cool.
Yeah, and begin implementing their so-called revolutionary agenda. So he envisioned using this network of Atomwaffen compounds to launch attacks against the targets in the U.S. When Brandon Russell and Devon Arthur's apartment was raided by the cops, the cops found we mentioned all this already, but specifically the police found traces of the explosive hexamethane triperoxide diamine, as well as detonators. So, a former member told to the journalist that he said, I think there are some guys that are actually materializing these plans, and most of them we don't hear from because they've gone offline, gone off the grid. So, I don't know, we mentioned a lot of members' names already. I don't know if they had a lot of members, as I said. A lot of them got arrested. Just maybe meant to mention a few more names. Like, for example, this guy, Michael Lloyd Hubsky, who called himself Commissar, as I said, who organized the Nevada hate camp. He also turned and came forward when he was arrested as an informant. Then there was a guy called Benjamin Bogart. He was arrested in February 2019 on child pornography charges.
Of course.
But FBI also admitting that the arrest was based on fears he was mobilizing for violence. Then there was a guy called Connor Climo, I guess it's pronounced.
Yeah.
He was also arrested in Las Vegas.
He's going to come up again later in our Führerkrieg.
Yeah, he's affiliated to other
next
groups.
Episode.
He was arrested apparently for planning to attack a synagogue, maybe with a firebomb, maybe with a group of gunmen, and then to do a similar attack on an office of an anti-defamation league, to attack a gay bar, and do a trial-run assault on a homeless encampment.
Stand-up fellow.
Yeah, right?
Yep. Yeah. Awesome people.
Mad David Copeland vibes with him.
Yeah, he actually this year in February he pleaded guilty to one count of possession of an unregistered firearm, specifically the component parts of a destructive device. And prior to this, he was planning to join the National Guard and also to move to Croatia.
Interesting. Okay.
Another guy is called Caleb Cole. I think this guy, there's also a lot of photos of him, also kind of a metalhead with a metalhead crew.
Yeah.
He was the leader in Washington State, the Washington State cell of Atomwaffen. And he's also, him and his crew, they had a 25-day trip to Europe, where they went to Czech Republic, Poland, and Ukraine, and made contacts with a lot of Nazis there. They also attended a black metal festival in Kiev, which was organized by Azov Battalion. Then there was
Terrifying
also a
times.
guy called Brendan Cameron. So he's a Canadian guy. He was a part of the Supplemental Reserve Force and a soldier before that. And he was a go-between Atomwaffen in the US and the Northern Order, which is a Atomwaffen affiliate in Canada.
So Northern Order is also important to Atomwaffen because it's the home of Dark Foreigner, who is their chief propagandist, responsible for a lot of the posters and designs that became part of their aesthetic.
He invented the kind of siege aesthetic,
yeah, exactly
right.
right.
That's kind of his whole thing.
Yeah,
right?
They also had this guy Patrick Matthews, who will come up again probably later. He was a trained explosives expert, master corporal in the Canadian military. A guy named Dakov, who was, I think, arrested in October of 2020, very recently. Also a special forces soldier with the Canadian Joint Incident Response Unit. Also, the guy was like heavy into the 09A. Yeah, and the guy was arrested, incidentally, after that podcast Sounds Like Hate released their expose and stuff. But I think the one I'd like to mention is this guy named Guillermo William von Neutegem, who was 34 when he got arrested. He is a murderer. He was arrested for stabbing this guy named Mohammed Aslim Zafis, who was a caretaker of a mosque in Toronto. And he's probably also connected, I think he is actually connected, they've decided, to the murder of a guy named Rampreet Singh, who was like living under a bridge. Also Southeast Asian guy,
South Asian guy.
Yeah, South Asian, very close to where Zafis was murdered. But this guy is also a kind of a media presence for Atomwaffen. He records 09A chants, and I wanted to debut one of these to you guys. You haven't heard it yet. I'd like to hear your first impressions on it.
All right.
Let me cue it up.
Let's go. Let's go.
All right, DJ Hot Content. Cue that up.
Boil, reptilian, boil. Boil in the corrosion of your own self-destruction. Boil, reptilian, boil. Boil in the corrosion of your own.
Listen to that voice.
Fear. Boil, Leviathan, boil.
All right. I mean, that's plenty.
What the fuck?
Yeah, that guy killed people.
Wait, who made this?
What's his fucking name? That Guillermo von Neutegem. This is a recent spate of murders. So yeah, these people are dangerous.
It sounds like
and
those,
absurd.
some of the vocals sound like some of the shittier neo-folk bands.
Yeah,
except with
definitely,
a synthesizer set to like the factory instrument settings. But I have to say, composition-wise, he put some effort into it. It's just you can't cover up lame.
Yeah.
Well, the two people that commented on that video
They
seemed
dug
to be very
it.
happy about it.
Yeah.
It was fucking great,
Yeah, I
man.
really liked it. He does some chants and things as well, and meditations.
Good job.
Yeah. So anyway, that asshole's at least in jail. But again, that's not necessarily good news either, because when these guys go to jail...
So Boyle, Reptilian Boyle is the Jew, right?
They're exorcising the dragon. I think it's called The Exorcism of the Dragon is the title.
Exorcism of the Dragon.
Yeah. So those are the Canucks, the Northern Order.
Very nice. Yeah, I feel like Canadian Nazis have this flair for the, kind of dramatic. Rahowa is from Canada, too, and they have those kind of like operatic vocals.
So, as we said, Atomwaffen was from the start, as they say, a siege-built organization, but the Satanist stuff came later, a bit later with Denton. So not all of the members were really into the so-called Noctulian bullshit. Some of them really didn't like it. And a bunch of them were like really affected to such a point that they left the organization, which is funny. They are like into praising serial killers, dropping the bomb on the atom bomb and stuff, but like Satanism, this is too much for them.
Well, honestly, though, if you had to like play the Star game,
yeah, yes,
you would probably
be annoyed.
True, this is true. So a bunch of them quit because of these Satanist ties, and they. So, for example, one of them said, I'm probably going to leave Atomwaffen I've been doing a lot of thinking. Atomwaffen still has full potential, but the way rape is taking Atomwaffen as far as the whole Satanist shit is going to hold things back. So they also started posting publicly about this and outing people as Satanists, attacking them, accusing each other. So they use Gab, social media, which is favored by Nazis, to have this fight. And one of them created a Gab account to specifically expose the group's Satanist ties. And he even linked an audio call of supposedly conversation between Atomwaffen members arguing about Satanism.
We're going to attempt a reenactment here.
Yeah, I was thinking that
Ray described the voice here as kind of a Satanist Ben Shapiro.
Yeah. I'm gonna attempt
think that. The more kind of dicky sounding Nazi here, who is a Satanist, I think that's probably rape. And the way he talks somehow reminded me of Ben Shapiro.
All right.
In your opinion, Satanism contradicts the ideals of National Socialism, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to try to get mad and say that you're a fucking idiot. Like, I want to know legitimately what part of it contradicts the ideas of National Socialism.
Every part. I've literally read both of those books. None of it stood out to me as...
Have you read the Satanic Principles? The fucking baseline ideas of what Satanism stands for? You cannot honestly read that and tell me it reflects none of what National Socialism teaches.
Yes, exactly.
And scene.
Yeah. So it doesn't help that, like,
he really does. Now that you mention it, he does really sound like this.
Yeah.
He sounds kind of slowed down, like a southern kind of version of it, but it really is that same grating. Just it's a voice you want to punch.
Yes, exactly. Also one of the members, he wrote a 27-page long Google document about the Satanist connections of Atomwaffen and uploaded it to the internet. So,
which, to be fair, is short for an 09A text. So.
yeah. So if you're interested, you can find it and read it. Not all of the members of Atomwaffen were persuaded by these anti-satanic arguments.
You don't say.
So, for example, one guy said, "You guys can get all moralistic if you want about Satanism. But at the end of the day, when the fucking race war comes, morals aren't going to do anything but get you fucking killed."
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
All right.
So, yeah, there was a little conflict inside there. A bunch of people left. But this was kind of, they were approaching the end anyway by this point. So
they're also kind of turning themselves into a bit of a joke too to other Nazi groups.
Yes.
Like they get picked on a lot. Kind of more mainstream Nazi podcasts start picking on them.
Yeah.
Andrew Anglin gets into it.
So this year, Politico published an article in which they wrote that there are some indication that the U.S. Department of State could be on the brink of designating the first violent white supremacist group as a foreign terrorist organization, I think. And it was indicated in this article that it will be Atomwaffen Division. So this was, I think, in March. So quickly after that, the leadership of Atomwaffen, they empowered James Mason to go on the internet and just have I don't know if it was an audio or video recording and just proclaim the disbandment or the end of Atomwaffen Division.
Right.
And so this was probably a tactic for them just to avoid being proclaimed terrorist by the State Department. But anyway, this didn't happen in the end. Maybe because of their tactics were right or because there was never really any intention of proclaiming them to be a terrorist organization. So instead, the Russian Imperial movement, a lesser-known neo-Nazi group in St. Petersburg, was eventually named instead of Atomwaffen. Also what happened just prior to this was that in January and February, FBI did a series of coordinating arrests on domestic terror suspects. So they arrested a bunch of leaders and members of Atomwaffen and also members of other siege-pilled, as they say, groups. like the base that we'll talk about in one of the next episodes. So they were arrested because they were suspects. It was alleged that they were planning plots to shoot the Virginia gun rally, and they also did death threats delivered to the doorsteps of journalists. But also, for example, Denton was also arrested. He was arrested because of a swatting campaign that he did.
The bravest of all means of confronting your enemy.
He did a swatting campaign, and it was he targeted journalists. I think also the ProPublica journalists that interviewed him in
their offices,
and also the offices. Yes, and he planned to SWAT a bunch of people, even supposedly members of the Trump administration, politicians.
He went on a SWAT spree.
Yeah. Maybe we didn't mention it, but in the interview that he did for a Nazi podcast, where he sounded like a completely pretentious prick, Denton said that, basically...
It's not hard at all to not get doxxed, basically. You just have to not be a fucking idiot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he goes on and on about how all these...
So you notice that we know everything about him, where he lives and so on.
Pretty much anybody who gets doxxed deserves it, is the implication of that whole interview.
What is interesting is that the way he got arrested this year for swatting was that he unknowingly met with an undercover law enforcement officer and told him everything that he did. So he told him that he was he had this swatting conspiracy, that he used a voice changer when he made swatting calls, and he allegedly admitted that he swatted the offices of ProPublica and the investigative journalist. And he also stated, which sounds exactly like he does, that it would be good if he was raided for the swatting because it would be viewed as a top-tier crime. And he felt that the arrest would benefit Atomwaffen.
Great.
I mean, he's been asking for it forever. This is his dream. It finally, he was discovered. It's a happy story for rape.
So he's in prison, and he has also prosecutors said that he traded child pornography with another Nazi. So
again,
that can be assumed
not
at this
too
point.
surprising. Yeah.
No. It's interesting that in this bunch of people that was arrested, some of them, because of the COVID situation, requested that they should be let out of prison. Because of the overcrowded prison situation during the pandemic. And two of them actually got released.
Wow.
So it worked.
Wow. You know what? They always say that what we need is a big pandemic, and it worked out for them.
And none of them were charged with any terrorist thing.
Yeah. Well, as far as I understand, that designation is yet to be applied to including the base.
Yeah, but I think they can charge them individually as terrorists, even if the organization is not proclaimed a foreign terrorist organization, no?
Right. Yeah. Well, I wonder if this is where maybe Boris, maybe now's the time to mention this Russian issue, because I'm wondering now if tying them to the imperialist movement is what's it called?
Yeah, the Russian Imperial movement. Yeah. So
if that helps make the argument that they're a foreign terrorist organization, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, which I found to be kind of a tenuous connection, because I mean, I saw this in the Wikipedia page. You see that Atomwaffen Russia and that Atomwaffen members were trained by the Russian Imperial movement. Although the articles that I see about that don't actually really give any concrete evidence about it. And the reason I think it's kind of weird is that, well, obviously there's not any concrete evidence that the Russian Imperial movement does run these training camps, outside of St. Petersburg. It's called Partizan, actually, ironically. And they basically train people to go to Donbass and fight for the Russian separatists there. But Atomwaffen is affiliated with Azov and Ukrainian neo-Nazis, and in many ways, ideologically, they don't seem to really meet up with the Russian Imperial movement at all. Russian Imperial movement is exactly what it sounds like. It's Tsarist Russian fascism, like kind of this fascist monarchism. They're Orthodox Christian fanatics. You know, they don't like sit around listening to black metal and like hard bass and, you know, make like edgelord videos about nuclear war. They, you know, have pictures of, you know, great Russian cathedrals and this kind of shit. And when I was reading about this a little bit, I saw on a VK page of the Russian Imperial movement that they reposted that one of these Atomwaffen members got arrested in seemingly like kind of a positive light. My guess is that if you're going to proclaim Atomwaffen a foreign terrorist organization, it's probably better to link it to Russians than Ukrainians, which the U.S. and NATO support. Right. So that's my guess about that connection there, because I haven't, you know, basically there's an article in this like Argentine website about this, and they're saying that like, okay, well the connection is that like all these Atomwaffen guys went to Russia. Right. And met with some people. One of them went to St. Petersburg. Well, okay, but there's no pictures of them there. There are pictures of them with Azov and a bunch of Americans. Actually, a couple of them were just deported like a couple months ago from Ukraine for training with Azov in you know, somewhere in Ukraine. So that connection is very strong, and there is connection in Russia to there are Russian Atomwaffen people as well, but that's a different story.
So I guess if you were to comment on the Atomwaffen presence in Russia in a word.
Well, I don't know. I think in the constellation of Russian neo-Nazi groups, of which there are a lot, you know, since the 90s till now, there were a lot of different ones. It exists. Some indications seem to show that some of them are connected to the band National Socialist Society, which makes sense. Those are like the really kind of the most hardcore guys. Most of them were locked up a few years back. They killed like 20 odd people, mostly immigrants from Central Asia, and a snitch of their own who they decapitated and put a video up on the internet that was circulating around back in like 2011. 2012. Right. So there's some connection. Those guys, again, in the world of Russian neo-Nazis, like Atomwaffen seems to be kind of a blip on the radar, but, you know, it doesn't mean that that it's not a thing that doesn't exist. They're definitely connected to this, to the Baltic state variations of Atomwaffen and to the Ukrainian ones.
Yeah, we'll get into the Baltic states next episode. Yeah. But I think then this sort of sounds similar then to actually the German Atomwaffen as well. Right. That is, it's sort of mostly important because it's in a greater context of rising neo-Nazi movements. I mean, especially like really dramatic revelations of the National Socialist Underground and stuff like that. So mostly Atomwaffen in Germany was responsible for like death threats and propaganda, although there is some link to this Halle synagogue shooting in 2019, which took the lives of two like passersby, and the shooter was found with some Atomwaffen material. But apart from that, they were mostly terrorizing these journalists, Jem Özdemir and Claudia Roth. Jem, by the way, got this. Even you left-wing Turkish swine have now made it onto our death list. And it was sent by Atomwaffen Division. You are currently the second name on our hit list, they say to this guy, Jem. And now Jem's been threatened by a lot of people, including, by the way, the PKK at some point in his long career of dealing with assholes. So that's most of it. There was this arrest of a 22-year-old in Bavaria who was being investigated under the suspicion of preparing a terrorist attack, martyring himself, etc. And he's also been responsible for instructing people how to procure and smuggle illegal firearms. But yeah, that's about it, really, for the German Atomwaffen Division. I mean, the extended, what we're calling the Waffenhaus family, will be covered at length in the next episode. Yeah. Colorful characters.
So Denton is in prison, as we said, and he made a connection with a so-called charity, which is basically like a right-wing organization that supports fascist right-wing prisoners. And because he is in a facility, as they say, where inmates may not receive books or magazines, so he's searching for pen pals. And they wrote on the website that he is interested in receiving letters about Dungeons and Dragons, the Bible, and Lords of the Rings.
Sure, all great fantasy things. Yeah. Is this group, by the way, this prisoner outreach group, by any chance called the Iron Cross?
I don't think so, no.
No? Wasted opportunity.
But they were like people, they are also supporting the guy who murdered Heather Hare, for example, in Charlottesville.
Right, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, he would also like to, he would be looking more for letters inspired by Tolkien, Hobbit fanfic, or passages of the Bible to get him through his potentially lengthy sentence. A bunch of other people who were arrested recently this year connected to Atomwaffen were also into swatting. So there was a bunch of them, I think, who did that. So, for example, FBI affidavit unsealed recently the identity of a member of the group called John William Kirby Kelly, who set up and maintained an internet relay chat called DeadNet.
Sorry, it's not okay to be named that. You can have one of those names.
Yeah, John William Kirby Kelly. Yeah. So he made this channel called DeadNet, and it was used to conspire to plan, carry out, and document their swatting attacks. And him and his co-conspirators are affiliated with or have expressed sympathy for Atomwaffen. And also, investigators say that one of Kelly's phones, on one of Kelly's phones, they found a photo of him and others in tactical gear, holding automatic weapons, next to pictures of Atomwaffen recruitment material and siege, of course. Mm-hmm. So these DeadNet members also had a site on dark web called Dogspin. And the site listed the names, addresses, phone numbers, and often known IP addresses, social security numbers, dates of birth, and other sensitive information of hundreds of people that they intended to SWAT. And a blue gun icon was added to their name if they were successfully swatted.
SWAT-waffen.
Should we actually define what swatting is for people that might not know?
Swatting is when you call the SWAT team on an unsuspecting person on the hopes that the SWAT team will do what it often does and just indiscriminately murder whoever's in the house.
Yeah, you falsely claim that there's a person with a gun there, for example, threatening to kill someone, having hostages or anything like that. Yeah. Which is, I think, first started to be used by like some gamers.
Yeah, gamers that do it to each
SWAT
other.
people they were playing games online with.
Yeah, this is, yes.
Yeah, this is a part of this pathological internet culture that's very much a part of groups like Atomwaffen.
Yeah. Again, their art style looks like internet gaming art. It looks like 2000s era Flash games and stuff. Yeah.
So one of the members of the group DeadNet that I just mentioned was an individual that used the nickname Chance or something like this. And he stated that he's responsible for maintaining siege culture, which is the website that we know Denton maintained and started. Mm-hmm. So was this him or someone else? I don't know.
Their merch and literature outlet, as well as blogs and propaganda. I'm trying to think of the fucking guy's name. The guy that took over for Hitler at the end of the war.
Some admiral.
Dönitz or something? Admiral Dönitz?
Yeah.
The Bremen government or not Bremen. Flensburg government.
Flensburg, yeah.
So Atomwaffen would be proud to know that their organization kind of went the same way as the original daddy organization went. The last leader to take over for this dying organization, that was at this point just a running joke on a lot of Nazi forums, a lot of Nazi podcasts, etc. I mean, we had this meme we were looking at a minute ago where there's like the Chad Virgin meme, but the Chad is the Islamic State and the Virgin says Atomwaffen Division. And it's just like a list of shit that people are, I don't know, cool skull mask because he has the brain of an edgy 13-year-old, Virgin with rage, nice blue jeans retard, they'll hold up great in cold or wet weather, this kind of stuff. in this time, this man named Cody Moraes makes a name for himself, and his rise to the top is quite indicative of the quality of this organization. So Cody was an Eagle Scout back when he was 15, and eventually, by the time he's 30, finds himself leading the national leadership of Atomwaffen Division. And so he, sometime around 2015, 2016, and this is all, by the way, from the journalism of Nate Thayer, who neo-Nazis do not care about at all. They make a big point out of not caring about him. They make a point out of not reading his work, and they tell all the time to each other how little they care about Nate Thayer. Totally irrelevant. So Nate uncovers that around 2015, this guy was writing things on this Bull Patriot Discord server. That would be a reference to Dylan Roof, I believe, saying, "I'm a sleeper cell psycho trying to train the youth," and he becomes the head of the Vanguard America at some point. And then when Heather Heyer dies, and Heather's killer was wearing a Vanguard America uniform, Moraes leaves Vanguard America the next month, does that noble Aryan tactic we talked about a few episodes back of bravely disavowing the organization you headed. So then a Unicorn Riot ends up doing this huge Discord dump after Charlottesville and revealing a lot of conversations and identities of people. And around this time, this guy named Eli Mosley, who used to be Elliot Klein of Identity Europa, had this scandal, internal scandal to the neo-Nazis, having claimed that he went from Kuwait to Baghdad back and forth, did a little bit on the east border over by Iran, is a quote of his in like an interview he gives. So at the time, Cody is making fun of this guy and saying like, "Oh, who the fuck is this, stolen valor fake Nazi?" So around February, Cody starts promoting Temple of Blood and Order of Nine Angles books and stuff like this. Joins Atomwaffen Division at the same time. No, sorry. I'm sorry. This happened before. He was Atomwaffen already. He leaves Vanguard America and becomes the Arizona head of Atomwaffen. So he writes, I can only get hard by reading Bluebird. Bluebird being the sequel to Iron Gates that we covered in the previous episode. It's like what they said about watching too much porn, he wrote in February 2018. In his brain, it goes like this. My brain, to Order of Nine Angles material, to Bluebird, to Iron Gates. This is his, he's describing his philosophical development here. So he starts stockpiling weapons around this time when he's masturbating to Bluebird, including a sniper rifle for what he says is Mamser spotting. And he's elevated finally to the national leadership of Atomwaffen Division in 2019. And this is all under, this whole time, he's telling everybody that he's this badass veteran. And that's really important to his rise and his cred on these, chat servers and stuff. He says, this is a quote of his, I've cleared a lot of houses without entering them and went in and found just dead women and kids. It fucks with my head. He says, this is in 2018. Of my kills, probably 20% of them deserved it. That's why I drink and smoke weed. I won't admit to shit to get diagnosed with PTSD, just other things. But seeing them dying sucks a little. Screaming Afghans holding a dead kid and then blasting them. I'm evil. I feel bad about the shit like that. He also writes, I'm 5'9", I'm taller than most people on the planet. I'm genetically perfect. I'm a smaller model of the master race designation.
5'9" is not that tall.
Nah. He's kind of got this teddy bear look to him, honestly. But it turns out this guy wasn't a veteran. He's I think he something like applied to the National Guard, never completed the process, or was eliminated from it. No time served in any war whatsoever. So that this is the leadership that Atomwaffen Division has to offer. That's Cody. That's Cody Waffen.
Great, another winner.
There you go. So maybe it's not a big surprise that eventually they took a different direction.
Indeed.
Yeah. As we said. In March of this year, James Mason declared that the group has been dissolved. And then a new group appeared this year. I think it was, when exactly, let me see. In July 25th, a bunch of Atomwaffen leaders who were not in prison announced that they are reforming as a new group called the National Socialist Order, NSO. And it draws from a cadre of former Atomwaffen who avoided jail time. They stated that much good came out of Atomwaffen, but that the new organization has learned from the mistakes of its predecessor. Immediately, they talked to Vice News, I think. And then, yes, Vice News, a person calling the leader of NSO talked to a reporter, and he said, I'm one of the executive leaders. I'm one of the 4 people who run the group. And all of us control a region of sorts in the US. You know, there's 4 regions that we have, so all four of us make decisions together. We're going to keep people from, if they do anything illegal, which we don't encourage or discourage, we're going to keep them from talking about it online.
They did learn their lesson.
Yeah. So they also boast how they were never infiltrated, as far as they know, by FBI, unlike other groups. So they
That's
say,
a complaint or a brag?
I guess a brag in this case.
Okay, so unclear
so
with that.
they also say that they're going to vet people exclusively in person. So he says no FBI agents typing away on his computer from Langley and saying he's a 19-year-old kid out in Montana who wants to join this Nazi group. It's all going to be in person. We're going to do detailed interviews. We're just going to be very careful.
Right, because the FBI has actually never sent people in person to infiltrate fucking right-wing groups.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, when we get to, I think, the base episode, there's a Northern Order guy, an Atomwaffen Canada guy, that does recruit like a fresh journalist in person.
Yeah.
Vets him in person.
And immediately
Guy's,
tells him
never
everything.
done it before.
It's just-
The journalist had never done undercover work ever in his life. It was just like, how hard can it be? And the dude's like, welcome. Yeah, good. It'll last this time, though, I'm sure. I got a good feeling about it.
So they say they are considering of doing a hate camp again and producing new propaganda, but they admit that Atomwaffen didn't get that much of a group cohesion or anything came out of it. So they also state that they don't have anything specific, that James Mason doesn't have anything specifically to do with the group. And Mason said that he's aware of the NSO, but has no formal links to it.
Right.
Which, of course, how would be...
I mean, why even say, that means I have links.
No.
I mean,
Yes, exactly,
Why not
yes.
just say I don't have links?
No.
Yes.
I have no formal links.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Break that code.
So they are operating a website called the American Futurist, I think. And you can see this is now the return of Alexander Slavers again, which is where we started from. So he's heavily featured on the website. A lot of his writings are recommended literature, like required reading. But there is no Satanist stuff. So I think they purged everything that Denton wrote through.
Because Slavos, in the era of Iron March, also wrote against the O9A. He thought it was kind of stupid. He was not a big fan of David Myatt. Neither were some of the other guys on Iron March. They didn't like Myatt. They thought, O9A was stupid and, whatever. Waste of time.
I mean, especially considering that there is and remains a large Christian component of this movement.
Well, I mean... Slavos doesn't...
White power.
Slavos doesn't disagree with
hate
it from
the
that
movement.
side. He just thinks that O9A is dumb, which, I mean, it kind of is.
Slavros in this faction, they are like completely siege build. So they hate the Christian or more kind of trying to be respectable side of the movement, but they're just not into Satanism.
Yeah.
So that's essentially the story as far as America goes of the Atomwaffen Division, from their ignoble beginning to their sneaking out into a new organization, all the mix of militarism and military LARPism kind of coming together in these highly aesthetically designed posters of black and white and red, and kind of this is their whole thing.
And we also mentioned some of the connections of, in Russia, Ukraine, Germany, but there are also several more in many other countries in Europe and Australia as well.
Atomwaffin, I think it's very fair to say that they inspired a lot of, especially young people around the world, around Europe.
They inspired also other groups in America and North America as well. Yeah. So as we get into in the next episode, we'll get into the sort of Waffen house of all of them, all the little organizations and stories and dramas and just absurd chat wars and things like this. But we need to talk about Sonnenkrieg a bit. Feuerkrieg. What else is there, guys?
Sonnenkrieg, Feuerkrieg, National Action.
Bullwaffen. There's a group that I'm calling... I'm just going to name it. I'm naming it Milfwaffen because there's a story there that I can't wait to tell you.
Yep.
It's, but it goes right up to now. I mean, the news doesn't stop about these guys and their offshoots.
And of course, the base, which will probably require its own episode.
The base will definitely give the base its fair treatment. I guess a fun spoiler for that one is that it's probably the most infiltrated neo-Nazi organization in the last 20 years. It's got to be just leaks everywhere. But yeah, all right. So there you go. You guys now know about a boy named Rape and his whole adventure. And God, why do you listen to the show? Why do you still do it to yourself?
You've gotten the Atomwaffen Division about as summed up as we can give you guys. Tune in for more depressing tales of.
You always sell the next episode like this. You're always like, tune in if you want to hurt yourself. I mean, if you've gotten this far, something's wrong with you. So we'll just hope that gets you to the end. All right, guys. Bye. Later.
Hey there, Fritz here from The Empire Never Ended. This has been one of our weekly free episodes for free people. But for premium people, we also have weekly premium episodes, which you can get at patreon.com/tenepod, TENEPOD, and also follow our various social media things in the show description there. Like and subscribe them. Follow them. Like and follow and subscribe. Follow them. Do it.